So hello and welcome on behalf of the National Children's Bureau to our webinar on Early Years Stronger Practice Hubs. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day for joining us today. I'm Jill Holden, I'm Programme Lead in the Early Childhood Unit here at the National Children's Bureau, and NCB are delighted that we've been appointed as the delivery partner for the Stronger Practice Hubs, and I'm delighted to have the honour of leading this delivery on behalf of NCB. So I'll say a little bit more about me and my role in a moment, but first of all I'd like to just introduce some of my colleagues who are here today. I think everybody's got their cameras on, but if I can come around the virtual room as it were, and Alice, would you like to say hello first?
Hi everyone, I'm Alice Ashworth. I'm from the Department for Education and I'm the team leader for the Early Years Stronger Practice Hubs. Really delighted to have you all join us for this.
Fabulous, thanks Alice. Can I come to you, Sophie?
Yeah, thanks Jill. Hi everyone, I'm Sophie Todd. I'm the delivery lead on the Stronger Practice Hubs programme. I'll be talking about how the hubs kind of fit into the DfE's wider recovery programme, and Alice and I will be answering your questions a little bit later on. But just a huge thank you for taking the time to be here.
Oh, fabulous, thank you Sophie. Sarah, can I introduce you?
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Tillotson. I work for the Education Endowment Foundation, leading on their early years work. The EEF has been appointed evidence partner for the Stronger Practice Hubs work, so really excited to be here today to kind of explain some of the things that we've got planned.
Brilliant, thank you Sarah. And Octavia?
Hi everyone, I'm Octavia Holland. I'm one of the Deputy Directors at the National Children's Bureau, leading on education and early years. I'm really excited to be here and delighted by how many people are coming, and it should be a really good session. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Fabulous, thanks Octavia, and thanks everybody. And also behind the scenes, who you can't see, but we have Tarek, Alison and Sarah from National Children's Bureau, who are the magic behind making this all happen smoothly today. So big thank you to them behind the scenes as well. Okay, so before we get going with the content of the session, I'd just like to share a couple of little sort of technical and housekeeping points. We're hugely delighted that so many of you are attending the session today, and I know as Alison's been desperately trying to manage the booking systems behind the scenes, we've had to sort of increase the numbers because so many people wanted to come, which we're hugely delighted at. So I'm told that to maximise the bandwidth and make sure it all runs smoothly, that's all sort of out of my capacity to know what to deal with, but I'm told that we need to sort of limit some of the functions for this webinar. So we've set functions to only allow camera and microphone for those people who are presenting today. What I do need to say is this absolutely doesn't mean we won't want to hear from you. So your questions are absolutely vital to help us to continue to shape the delivery of the programme, but more importantly, so we know you all have a deep understanding of how the hub processes will work, particularly the recruitment process to support you with your applications. So we'd really like you to post questions throughout the session, and at the top of the black bar there you should see a little Q&A bubble. It's got two little speech marks with a question mark in it, so please do post your questions in there and post those all the way through as well. So our colleagues who are behind the scenes are going to be working on collating those questions as they come in, so that we can look at grouping similar questions into themes, and that will hopefully help us to get through as many questions as we possibly can in the time we've got. If you've got any questions that are specific or very individual to your particular circumstances or your setting, then please do email those into us and we'll respond to you via email. I'll put the email address up there in a moment. We've also produced a frequently asked questions document. So in that, we hope we've anticipated many of the questions that you might ask, but we know there are bound to be still dozens of questions that we haven't thought of. So we've allowed a really good chunk of time on our agenda today for a question and answer session, and you've met our panel here already. And all of those will be added to the frequently asked questions document, which is available on the MCB website, as well as on the Foundation Years website. So if we run out of time on questions today, we'll add them to that, along with any more that come in over the following weeks. So we know this session's held at a challenging time, with it being over the summer holiday period. So I'll touch on timescales in a moment, but to ensure that the messages are accessible to any colleagues that are not able to make it today, or to our next live webinar. We're recording this session and we'll upload that shortly to the Foundation Years website as well. Want to emphasise as well, just if you're watching this on a recording, that doesn't mean you're not able to give us questions. Please do send those in to us, to our email box, and we will answer those. And that's questions for all of us, for ourselves at the National Children's Bureau and for colleagues in the Department for Education and the Education Endowment Foundation. OK, so there's who's here today. I should have clicked on that before. So here's our agenda for today. You can see we've got a really busy agenda with lots of information for you. You can also see there in bold and slightly larger at the bottom our email address. So if anybody wants to quickly note that down, I will put it up several times throughout the day as well. So it's sph@ncb.org.uk. So please do send in any questions to there that you can't manage to post today or that you think of after the event. OK, so I'm now really pleased to be able to hand over to Sophie from the Department for Education, and Sophie's going to be able to tell you a bit more about the recovery programme and how stronger practice hubs fit into that in general. So get your slide up here as well, Sophie. There we go. OK, Sophie, over to you.
Thank you, Jill. So yeah, like I said, I'm Department for Education's delivery lead on the programme. And I just wanted to give you a little bit more information about DFE's role. So we have created and funded this programme, and we've appointed EEF and NCB to work alongside us and yourselves, the early years sector, to deliver this on a national scale. And it's just worth saying that this programme represents a really new and kind of exciting approach for the department, because we're funding a systems leadership approach on a national scale, which we haven't really done before in early years. And this is about kind of trying to create a system of leaders in the sector supporting others in the sector. But just going back in time slightly, I'd like to talk briefly about how the Hubs programme kind of came about, and hopefully put it into a bit of context for you and explain why it's so important. So as I know you'll be really acutely aware, and as we know from research, the COVID pandemic has disrupted learning and development and exacerbated the outcomes gap for children who were, either born into or experienced their earliest years during this time. And on average, a child aged 0 to 4 lost 140 days of formal childcare up to March 2021. And as I know you'll know, it's had a particular impact for the most disadvantaged young children who've been kind of among the hardest hit by lockdowns and social distancing. So in response to all of this, the government has made up to £153 million available as part of the Early Years Education Recovery Package. And the aim of this package is to invest in a really wide range of programmes to help address that lost learning, to improve training for practitioners, and help build a stronger and kind of more expert workforce. And just to say, this 153 million comes on top of additional funding that's been announced for 2 existing programmes, which are the Nuffield Early Language Programme, which has received 17 million, and the Professional Development Programme, which has received 10 million. So that brings the total investment in early years recovery to up to £180 million. So what does the recovery package involve? Well, I'll just run you through briefly. So firstly, it's an expansion of the Professional Development Programme, which supports early years staff to work with disadvantaged children. Secondly, we're reviewing and reforming the Level 3 qualification to make sure it's more evidence-based. Thirdly, we're expanding SENCO training to help more staff in both kind of group-based settings and childminders to get an accredited Level 3 SENCO qualification. Fourthly, we're expanding the number of places for initial early years teacher training with the aim of increasing the number of qualified graduates to the sector. Fifthly, we're providing training for early years practitioners to support parents with home learning, which we know is one of the biggest drivers of early outcomes. And then finally, we are funding a stronger practice programme, which I'll talk about briefly. So the aim of this strand is to improve training for practitioners, which we know is really important for driving up quality in settings. And this strand is made up of 3 separate but complementary programmes, including the hubs. So firstly, we are introducing a new online child development training with the aim of kind of upskilling practitioners, improving knowledge of child development. This is going to be hosted on the existing Help for Early Years Providers platform. It's going to be universally accessible to everyone, and it's going to be launching this autumn. Secondly, the Experts and Mentors programme, which you may well be familiar with, and you may even be involved with it. This enables practitioners to access mentoring support to help strengthen children's learning and development, and also allow settings to access kind of bespoke leadership support. And this programme is targeted at settings who are most in need, and the national rollout for this is September. And then finally, Stronger Practice Hubs. So as you know, our aim here is to create a new network of hubs, sharing good practice and offering evidence-based professional development. And Jill's going to cover this in much more detail in a moment. And just to say that these 3 programmes that are part of the Stronger Practice strand are separate, but they will work together. So for example, we expect that the hubs will receive referrals from their local experts and mentors where a setting might need more support. And hubs might also approach experts and mentors in their area for their expertise. So if any of you are currently involved in experts and mentors, or you think you will be, just to say that this doesn't prevent you from applying to become a hub, as long as you meet the hub eligibility criteria. And I also wanted to touch briefly on the Early Years Foundation stage reforms. So this recovery programme that I've outlined is designed to build on and support the reforms to the EYFS, which, as you know, were introduced in September 2021. And the aim of these reforms is to strengthen the early years curriculum, bring like a clear approach to assessment, reduce unnecessary paperwork and give you more time with children, with the overall aim of improving child outcomes at age 5. And just to say, last month in July, DFE also announced that we're going to be publishing a slimmed down childminder specific version of the EYFS framework. And that kind of comes as part of the wider package of childcare support, which also includes boosting the number of childminders and driving take-up of childcare offers. So I'm going to pause there. Thank you so much for listening. I know that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the recovery programme, but please share any questions on that. I'm going to hand back over to Jill now for a more detailed overview of the Hubs programme.
Oh, fabulous. Thanks ever so much for that, Sophie. That was really useful to get that broader context before we sort of dig down deep into all about Stronger Practice Hubs. So thank you. OK, so before we do dig down deeper into that information about the Stronger Practice Hubs, just wanted to give you a little bit of background for our role as delivery partners. So I thought it might be useful to tell you a little bit about the National Children's Bureau. So NCB brings together people and organisations and our aim is to drive change in society to deliver a better childhood across the UK. If you've been on our website, you'll see that as part of our strapline there. So we are collaborators and conveners, bringing people together to influence policy and practice. And our vision is for every child to be safe, secure and supported. Our mission is to build a better childhood for every child. And our ethos is very much to champion children and the importance of childhood, and children and young people are very much at the heart of what we do, as is the voice of the child being very central. One of the things NCB is really strong at is that, as I said, that bringing together people in a variety of different ways to share learning and support and practice development. And this is one of the reasons that we are really super excited to be delivering a Stronger Practice Hubs programme. So, as part of NCB, we have a number of teams, all of whom have different but interlinked focus. So we like to lovingly call this the NCB family, and you'll see here a number of logos, and the family includes Anti-Bullying Alliance, Council for Disabled Children, Childhood Bereavement Network, and you can see those all up there on the team on the screen. And the team that I belong to is the Early Childhood Unit. So we'll be able to draw on the wealth and knowledge and experience of the full wider NCB family throughout the Stronger Practice Hubs programme, and I'll talk a little bit more about our specific role in a moment. So NCB's early childhood unit, like I said, which is where I sit, works across, although NCB works across the entire age range of children from 0 to 25 years. Our work in the early years sector is led through the early childhood unit, and we focus on children aged 0 to 5. So the delivery of Stronger Practice Hubs sits here within our early childhood unit. And as part of that, we care passionately about the high quality inclusive early years sector, and as such champion for early years professionals and they're just awesomely fabulous work that you all do. And we always work in partnership with children, parents and professionals, which is one of the reasons we're so keen to put these webinars on and give you that opportunity to be able to sort of feed into us any questions and comments as well through our email box. So just pop up here a quote from Anna, our CEO, that also shows how delighted NCB are to be able to be working on this programme. So now to dig a little deeper into the Stronger Practice Hubs and talk about that vision, eligibility criteria, and most importantly, how you can apply to be a hub. So our vision for Stronger Practice Hubs. Stronger Practice Hubs will launch in November 2022, and as already touched on, the programme aims to support settings to address the impact of the pandemic on younger children, and doing that through sharing effective evidence-based practice and building lasting networks, or indeed utilising and building on existing local networks. So just to note there, it's worth sort of noting here that the programme is absolutely not designed to duplicate or diminish existing support structures where they already exist. The aim is to complement and enhance with what already exists. And we're aware that what does exist as far as networking is really variable across the country. So the hub model will work directly with the sector on a systems leadership approach, with strong settings providing support to other parts of the sector. So as I've said, NCB prides itself on its ability as an organisation to be conveners and collaborators, finding ways to bring people and organisations together for a shared outcome. So for many years, we've been talking about how we can empower the sector, give the sector a voice, what we can do to enable more effective peer networking, particularly peer networking that breaks down those barriers across provider types. So support that's really driven from the sector supporting one another, and this is the absolute vision of Stronger Practice Hubs. So as delivery partner, NCB will be leading on that relationship with the new hubs, and that includes providing support, oversight, quality assurance, as well as running the selection process, which excitingly began on Monday this week when we launched the application process, which I'll come to in a moment. We're going to be supported by the Education Endowment Foundation. You met Sarah a little bit earlier on, you'll hear from her again in a moment. And EEF will support the Stronger Practice Hubs by providing accessible information about the evidence around early years pedagogy and the processes that support practice change. EEF will also support Stronger Practice Hubs in their approach to communicating, engaging with other settings who are implementing these evidence-informed practices. For example, that might be through development of exemplification and professional development programmes. So I won't say any more about that just now because I don't want to steal Sarah's bit. But the network of Stronger Practice Hubs will bring together the sector and develop a shared language and understanding around that evidence-based informed practice. So the role of Stronger Practice Hubs, I've put up the main sort of 4 categories that we anticipate how Stronger Practice Hubs will deliver their role. And I'll just briefly overview each of those for you now. So the first one is establishing local networks of settings to share knowledge and effective practice. So in the first year of delivery, it's envisaged that Stronger Practice Hubs will build on or strengthen a network of providers either within their own local authority or branching out into neighbouring local authorities. That depends on geography. So we know that there are some really huge local authorities and there are some really tiny local authorities. So that's one of the things that we'll work at individually with hubs around how that capacity will reach. In the second year of delivery, the network will expand to include providers from a much wider regional area. Networks will be made up of group-based settings, including maintained and PVI sectors, and childminders and other organisations such as charitable organisations or local authorities who also provide support to early years providers. Stronger practice hubs will lead the network, and that will ensure the access is available to everybody for all provider types. They'll be looking at how they can foster supportive relationships within the network, looking to create a sustainable legacy through that network that's been developed. So part of that, stronger practice hubs will be encouraged to be in settings with disadvantaged areas, and also settings who are requiring support to develop and engage in the networks. We envisage that networks will be virtual, although there might be a small amount of face-to-face work required for settings in need of a higher level of support, but NCB will support the stronger practice hubs around building their needs locally. The second bullet point here on the screen is about proactively sharing information and advice on evidence-informed approaches. So, for example, through newsletters, blogs, events, network webinars and social media. So the stronger practice hubs will become a local resource, upskilling the sector through dissemination of this information through a variety of tools. So the hubs will recognise the strengths of their whole network and working providers to develop resources that really sort of exemplify that journey of using evidence to inform decisions and practices that support the development of children, particularly those experiencing poverty. Information and advice and resources will be constructed to support locally recognised need, but these will be made wider through NCB. So looking at really how we can share any of the information that's been scoped and developed through the hubs on a much wider area so that all of the country can benefit from that as well. So hoping some of that will be web-based resources. So my third bullet point up here is acting as a point of contact for bespoke advice and signposting and referring to other funded support. So Sophie's already alluded to this in her introductory part there as well, but stronger practice hubs will have a thorough understanding of the wider DFE Early Years Recovery Programme, and particularly of the stronger practice programmes. So they'll be able to signpost practitioners to other elements of support, particularly things like the online development training, and they'll also be able to take and receive referrals from the experts and mentors programme and look at how those can sort of sit alongside each other. The Education Endowment Foundation will work with each stronger practice hub to identify quality programmes with evidence of improving child outcomes, and then the stronger practice hubs will be able to fund these evidence-based programmes to settings within their area. Again, Sarah's going to tell you much more about that in a moment. Stronger practice hubs will be knowledgeable about high quality support that's available within your local areas as well, for example, through local authorities, and will be able to signpost settings to that as well. They'll act as a point of contact for bespoke advice, which can be through an advice line or a monitored email address. And again, NCB will work with each hub to look at how best we're going to be identifying that support going forward. So advice given by the hubs will be informed by evidence, and we feel that's really important so that we can support settings to develop a deeper understanding of how robust evidence can inform decisions around how they can develop practice and improve outcomes, particularly for disadvantaged children. This strong evidence base specifically for early years is something I know the sector has wanted to develop for a long time. So again, really excited about being able to help scope this. It will enable more equity with the evidence base that's already available for older school age children. So really great opportunity we have through the hubs to be able to influence that evidence base. Settings who receive support from a hub will be asked to provide feedback on how useful they found that support and the extent to which their knowledge and confidence has grown as a result of their interactions with that stronger practice hub. And stronger practice hubs will have a single point of contact through us here in the Early Childhood Unit at NCB. So be able to turn to us if there's any queries that are raised by settings or you need further support around the whole signposting to other programmes, etc. OK, so my last point up here is working with the Education Endowment Foundation to select evidence-based programmes and then to fund and make available these programmes to settings. So another really exciting opportunity here that I've again just touched on. So Stronger Practice Hubs will have a specific pot of funding available that they can offer to other early years providers in their region or local area that aim to take up evidence-based programmes using that funding. So one part of the Stronger Practice Hub's bespoke offer will be to select and promote professional development programmes within their area. And the EEF will provide a curated menu of programmes for Stronger Practice Hubs to select from and make available within their region, whilst offering Stronger Practice Hubs guidance to identify informed programmes that they could include in their offer. So to enhance the quality and quantity of the research implemented within the early years sector, the EEF will I can't speak this afternoon, the EEF will fund research activities and evaluate the delivery of the impact of these as part of that professional development programmes, making sure that the lessons that we learn across these programmes are collated and shared right across the country. So we've created a little bit of a visual here for you. I know I've given you a huge amount of information on those last couple of slides. So this diagram hopefully shows a bit more visual how we anticipate hubs are going to work. So you can see from these circles here that the reach of the hub gets wider from the local and neighbouring local authority areas to a regional area over that first and second year of delivery. And in doing so, the delivery method of support becomes more generic. So looking at more virtual production of resources to share, such as web-based resources and newsletters, etc. So it's also really important to note that each hub will be different. So there isn't a one size fits all for hubs. And once hubs are recruited, we'll be working individually with each individual hub to scope how they will work and what they will be covering. And then we'll be there to support that as an ongoing basis. We'll have regular meetings with hubs and regular reviews. So as I've said, huge amount to take in there today, so please do remember that all the information I've given is available on the NCB website as part of the application pack, and also that we're recording this so you can watch back if you want to. And I'll talk a little bit more about what's available in that application pack in a moment. So eligibility, part of what you'll all be wanting to know today. So each hub will be led by a group-based setting. So the department's ambition is for hubs to be evenly distributed across the 9 government regions, and we're looking to create 2 hubs in each of the 9 regions. So hubs will represent both the maintained and the private voluntary and independent sectors, including childminders, and they'll be funded for 2 years until late 2024. So you'll see here on the screen there are 3 main eligibility criteria to become a Stronger Practice Hub. And that's been a group-based setting, and that can include, as I've said, school-based. This could be local authority maintained or schools belonging to a multi-academy trust. Can also be private, voluntary or independent, and that includes Ofsted registered daycare that's part of a children's centre or a family hub. The settings must be currently rated good or outstanding by Ofsted, and they must be providing early education places to children who are aged before they join a reception class. We've got a 4th eligibility criteria, and this is a reflection on the fact that programmes will mainly be targeted at children most in need due to the COVID impact, with a focus on supporting children from socio-economically disadvantaged backgrounds. So therefore, we prefer Stronger Practice Hubs to be located in an area of deprivation. However, we're also considering applications from settings who can demonstrate extended experience of working with socio-economically disadvantaged children. We'll be really pleased to welcome applications from partnerships. So I'll come on to the application form in a moment. There's a place on there to be able to select if you're applying as a partnership or as an individual setting. So the lead partner will need to be a group-based early years setting, and each of the partners, and we'll envisage there'll be up to 4 partners, each of those will be an early years provider. And we're really keen to encourage childminders to be part of partnerships, And then with that in mind, we'll also applications who have partnerships who span the whole of the PVI sector, maintained sector and childminding settings will be looked upon more favourably, since the programme really seeks that collaboration between different provider types. And of course, special schools are also welcome to apply as part of a partnership. So how you can apply. So the application process is open. It opened this Monday just gone, which was the 15th of August. And applications are open till 12 noon on Friday the 23rd, Friday the 23rd of September. If you've any queries about it, you can raise any queries to us through that email address, which I've popped up there on the screen again. And today's is the first of 2 webinars which we're holding for prospective hubs, and the next one's on the 9th of September at 10 AM. Also, if anyone hasn't managed to get a place on the live webinars, like I said, they're being recorded and recordings will be made available shortly. We know that a sort of response of wanting booking places on the webinars has been extremely high. So NCB welcome early applications, although these won't be considered any differently. The recruitment selection process will begin on receipt of first applications, but all applications will be submitted that are submitted by the deadline will be considered. In mid-October, stronger practice hubs will be selected and successful applicants informed. And in November 22, successful settings will begin operated as hubs as we launch. So a bit more about what you're all here to hear about is how can you get involved and how can you apply? So we've got a 4-stage application process, and that includes a written application. It includes an online interview for those who are shortlisted, and then a site visit for those who are shortlisted following the interview stage. And then finally, we'll be carrying out due diligence checks. As part of that, we'll also be asking for a statement from a local authority as part of the application process, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So the next few slides here, I've put together a few screenshots from the web page, so you can just see how it works and how you can go ahead with submitting your applications. We've got a dedicated web page and the link is there at the top. So here you can see as you go into there, at the bottom of that web page, there is a place where you can download resources. So like I say, I've screenshot what's available. Please note the application form that is there is just for context. So the actual application form is an online web-based application, which I'll talk you through in a moment. But so that applicants can read all of the questions together so that you can prepare what you want to write and what you want to put where on the application form. We've uploaded a PDF form version of the form, so you can see that there along with the supporting documents. But please do note this is only for information. Don't use that form to apply. We've then included a number of other documents that we thought would be really useful for you. There's a vision paper that gives a full overview of the programme. Then a scoring matrix. We believe it's really important that we're open and transparent with how we're scoring applications. So this section details how we're looking at applications, how we're scoring them, etc. So please do look at that alongside doing your application. And that's really important for the frequently asked questions document on there as well. So to tell you a little bit more about that, the FAQ will be updated regularly, so please do check back that you've got the most current version. So for example, hopefully by the end of this week, we'll update another version, which will include all of the questions that were asked at the local authority webinar that we hosted last week. And then next week, following week, we hope that we will update it again with all the questions that have been asked today. So you can tell if you've got the latest version by, I'm pointing at my screen, that's no good, is it? At the bottom of the page there, underneath that red writing, you can see the version date, and that's the front page of the FAQ on the website. So please do check back regularly and make sure that you've got the most up-to-date version of that. So the online application, once you've scrolled past all the information there on the website, you'll see that big pink button that says apply now. that will take you straight through to this first section, which is eligibility criteria. You can see that here on the right hand side of my screen. Applicants who don't meet that initial eligibility criteria will not, that application won't progress any further. You'll get an email response that says, unfortunately, you've not met the eligibility criteria, and it'll signpost you back to the website if you want any more information. And again, just to reiterate, any questions, please do get in touch. However, once you've selected that you meet the eligibility criteria, you'll progress onto the full application form. So there are, I've put a couple of arrows here. You'll see that very top arrow there. You can navigate forward and backwards in the application form, going to whichever page you want to do. So if you've put a bit in there and you think, oh, actually, I want to go back and add more, you can go backwards and forwards in that as well. You can also use the link that I've highlighted with the other arrow that's pointing upwards there. That's resume and save. So you can resume, we can save it and come back to it again if you need to sort of go and think about something else or you're short of time. So the selection criteria. So through the application process, settings need to demonstrate that you're able to meet all of the selection criteria. And again, that's based on the vision and aims for the programme. I've listed all of the selection criteria here on this slide, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to read through all of them. The information I've provided today is available in the application pack and supporting documents. So they're all available, like I said, on the NCB website. So please do take time to have a really good read of that. So support for hubs. Stronger Practice hubs will receive grant funding from the Department for Education to deliver the objectives of the hub. And that also includes funding for staffing costs. We realise that many of you will perhaps need to recruit into your current pool of staff to support delivery of the hubs. DfE estimates that up to around £900,000 of grant funding will be made available to each hub over that 2-year delivery period, and that total amount will be subject to delivery considerations. So we'll obviously have discussions with each hub around that when you're all appointed. Stronger Practice hubs will have training as well as ongoing support for their role of a Stronger Practice hub. So NCB will provide training around training and support around the practicalities of Stronger Practice hub delivery, as well as a quality assurance angle of Stronger Practice hub delivery, while support around fully understanding and using and disseminating the evidence-based and the information around that, that will be provided through the Education Endowment Foundation. NCB will also facilitate the bringing together of Stronger Practice hub leads for the purpose of peer-to-peer support. So really important that we share that across the network of Stronger Practice hubs, because we can all learn from each other. So that's a really exciting opportunity for hubs as well, to be able to learn from each other. As part of our offer, NCB has also arranged for hubs to have access to some specialist support around 2 areas that we felt hubs might need additional support in, and these are including and supporting childminders, and we've got bespoke support there available through Pacey, and also support to develop SEND practice, and we've got support there available through Council for Disabled Children. So this is a really amazing opportunity for us to develop this evidence-based peer support from within the sector, and also an opportunity to really showcase the amazing work that you do. I mean, I only have to sort of nod at what's gone on over the last 2 years throughout that pandemic, just to show how amazing, not that we didn't know it before, the sector is. So really hope that this showcasing we're going to be able to do through this programme as well will really help with raising the profile of the sector and the important role that you do in educating and caring for our youngest children. It's also an absolutely awesome opportunity for those settings who are selected as hubs, and I'd really urge you to consider applying for this groundbreaking opportunity. Will also create a legacy for early years to come. You can probably tell I'm personally incredibly excited. I was described as a bit of a puppy excitement the other day to be leading on this programme on behalf of NCB, and I'm looking forward to meeting and working with all the hubs who are selected. So I'm sure you're going to have lots and lots of questions that you want to ask us about hubs, which we'll give you a chance to in our Q&A panel shortly. But before that, I'm really delighted to be able to hand over to Sarah from the EEF. And while Sarah's talking, as I'm sure you have been doing throughout me talking there, please do continue to post your questions in the box. You won't be able to, so I should have said earlier, you won't be able to see the questions posted because they go directly to our behind the scenes team who are collating those, but please do continue to post those questions as Sarah's talking as well, and we'll get to those next. So hi Sarah, welcome, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. And yeah, it's lovely to be here, and I'm really pleased to share a couple of slides with you about some of the work that EF is doing related to Stronger Practice Hubs as evidence partner for the programme. To kind of help explain our role in the work of hubs, I'll first share a bit about the work of the EEF in general, because not everyone on this call might be familiar with us and our work, and then I'll go into the detail about our planned activities related to hubs. So in terms of who we are, the EEF is a charity and we focus on improving social mobility to try and enhance the quality of education for children experiencing poverty. And we operate with money gifted to us by the Department for Education in the form of an endowment. And this setup is really important because it means although we have government money, we are actually independent and we can interpret and share evidence without any bias or agenda. And it enables us to focus on that social mobility mission rather than having to need and focus on fundraising. And our recent re-endowment expanded our remit and capacity for work in the early years, including work related to Stronger Practice Hubs. We're really excited about this development, that this capacity increase and remit for greater work with the early years, because we believe the best opportunity for reducing the impact of inequalities is when you work with children in the early years. And I'm sure many of you are really acutely aware of this already, but as you can see on the diagram on the right, that differences in development and attainment between children experiencing poverty and their more affluent peers start early and grow as children progress through education. And 4 months kind of difference in development outcomes at the end of reception is a lot, but I think we have a realistic chance of closing the gap then. And so the best opportunity is working with early years to kind of close these inequality gaps. And I think the hubs work is going to be really useful for supporting that mission. There are 3 broad areas of activities that the EEF implements, and all of these activities are rooted in research evidence. The first activity is summarising evidence, and this involves us implementing or commissioning other researchers to gather all of the high quality evidence that's been published internationally, gathering it together on a certain topic through rigorous approaches, and then sharing what that evidence tells us. The second activity is that we fund generation of new research. So we find providers of good ideas or interventions that align with the evidence base or have some evidence already that they impact behaviour or children's outcomes. And we provide these programmes to either for free or at low cost to schools and early years settings. But we also appoint a researcher to study the delivery and impact of that programme so that the knowledge from that delivery of the programme can feed into our understanding of what works in education. This is particularly important, this activity, for the early years where there's been much less high quality research implemented with the sector, and even more so less research implemented with different providers in the early years sector, as most research has been implemented with the maintained sector and with teachers. So generating new evidence is really important for the early years. The third activity is that we encourage the use of evidence or evidence-informed approaches, and we do that in ways that enable us to act as a bridge between what academics say and what education professionals do or support children with. And there's 3 examples, or I'm going to use 3 examples today to kind of show you how we encourage evidence use. One way is that we translate or repackage information from those evidence summaries that I mentioned in kind of activity 1 into materials that are really easy to understand and have really clear recommendations. So busy practitioners have some good knowledge of what evidence is recommending they do to support children. And then when we find a programme like those I explained in activity 2, when we've done the research and we found that it has been proven to support children's outcomes, we find ways to support the organisation to bring that programme or approach to more staff and children. And this is really important because it's a really good way of early years settings implementing something that's supported by evidence. And we also, the EEF funds its own network of schools called the Research School Network, which are system leaders in sharing their journey of how they use evidence alongside their professional expertise to inform the decisions that they're making and the practice that they implement in the classroom. So the reason why we're really excited about the Stronger Practice Hub's work is that it facilitates the expansion of all of these 3 activities for the early years. So there's going to be more summarising of evidence, more generating of evidence, and more ways to promote the evidence use to the early years sector. So we think this is really exciting because this opportunity has the opportunity to raise the profile, I think, of the early years sector and support its expertise. To go into a bit more detail now about the particular activities that EEF will implement as evidence partner for the Stronger Practice Hub programme. The first is that we're going to be involved in sharing our knowledge and experience of establishing and encouraging an infrastructure that's a sector-led infrastructure for sharing evidence-informed practice. We've learned a lot over the last 11 years or so by doing that with our research school network. But obviously there's lots of differences between schools and early years settings in the sector, and so there's a lot for us to learn here too. But we think that the experience that we've got from that research school knowledge it provides it will give us an opportunity to kind of share some experience to start off this Hubs programme from a good base. The second activity is to develop a framework that supports the activity of the hubs and shares information on evidence-informed practices. The main aim of this framework piece is to provide a place for people to go in the early years sector to understand what the evidence says. And it's really important that we ensure that that information is useful and accessible to the early years audience. This framework is not just going to be available to the hubs, although it will underlie their work, it's going to be publicly available. So it's something all early years settings can use to guide their decision making. We think the benefit of the framework is that it will provide an opportunity for developing shared language across the early years sector about activities to implement. And it's going to summarise 2 things, is this framework: practices that support children, but then also practices that support staff development. And we're developing this framework at some speed. Different aspects of it will be ready at different times over the course of the next 2 years. But this provides a really good opportunity for us to engage with the early years sector, because we really want you to enrich the framework and collaborate on some of the material development. So as things, we'll release things as the over time in collaboration with the sector. To give you a bit more information about what this framework might look like, I've got some extra material on this slide here. So the framework needs a really good starting point, and it involves having a really good quality, a really good quality source of evidence to draw from. And actually, coincidentally, before we became involved in the Stronger Practice Hub work, we'd already commissioned some work that was going to help us here. So we have already planned to update our early years toolkit, which is a summary of all the international evidence on early years. And we've also already commissioned a systematic review on the characteristics of implementation in education. So we're going to be able to draw on this knowledge to create the framework. And so from that knowledge base, we plan to summarise that material in a new way by combining it with knowledge of practice to draw out a list of practices and approaches used in the early years. And you can see that on an example of that on my slide under summarise. So there you can see we've already started doing some work in the domain of communication and language. An approach is teaching vocabulary, and there's a list of 7 practices that underlie that approach of teaching vocabulary. And then our aim is to exemplify those approaches and practices in different contexts for teaching and learning in the early years. So for example, what does naming look like in an adult-led context, or a guided play context, or a free play context? And then also exemplify what that looks like in a school-based setting, or in a PVI setting or a childminder setting. So it is really obvious what those recommendations look like in practice. And then we're going to support the hubs with understanding and disseminating the framework through training that Jill mentioned. And then we'll collaborate with the hubs and the broader early years sector to exemplify these evidence-informed practices. And one of the ways that we're doing this exemplification is through video, and we've started developing that video library already. And as I've mentioned before, we're going to refine this framework over time in collaboration with the sector, making elements more robust over time as we've got as we're able to kind of do more of that research summary, but then also adding examples and publishing different elements of the framework. The third and final activity that the EF is involved in is providing a curated menu of professional development programmes that the hubs can fund. This is a really important aspect of the package, as it enables early years settings to have explicit support to adopt evidence-informed practices. We've started to identify some of the programmes already through our funding rounds, but the plan is for the hubs to select which of those programmes on the menu will be available in their area. And this, by us being able to kind of start some of that work now, it's enabling us to make sure there's enough capacity and supply in the system of these programmes. But we also want hubs to recommend programmes, so there's going to be opportunity for hubs to acknowledge what's going on in their local area already and recommend that those are brought to more people. And an additional aspect of this activity is that the EF is committing its own money to the project so that we can complete evaluations of each programme that's going to be delivered through the hubs network. And this will kind of feed into that research and enable us to update that framework. Give a bit more of a kind of overview of programmes. I can't name any of the programmes yet. That will come kind of in the November-December period, but there's going to be 3 categories of programme delivered over the life of the hubs. Some of the programmes, we're describing them as established programmes, where they've got capacity to deliver to over 50 early years settings at a time. Another type is we're naming emerging programmes that have capacity to deliver to 20 or more early years settings at a time. So these 2 types of programmes, the established programmes and the emerging programmes, will be on the menu from EEF for hubs to select for their region. And in italics on the slide there, you can see the type of evaluation that we'll offer for these programmes. So established programmes will have an efficacy trial, will help us find the impact on pupils as well as understand how delivery went. And the emerging programmes will just study the implementation and delivery of the programme. But if they are successful, then they would hopefully in future become efficacy trials later. The third category of programmes are those that are either innovative or developing programmes. They only have a capacity to deliver to a very small number of settings, maybe 5 to 10 settings at a time. And these could be programmes that are something that's been initiated from scratch or have been delivered before, but we need to provide checks that they align with the evidence base and that they are feasible and acceptable to the early years sector before we kind of support them to scale up. And these are the types of programmes that we want prospective hubs to recommend, and also the EF will have a funding round in the autumn for some of these programmes to come through as well. So a useful activity for a prospective hub would be to gather kind of local intelligence from places like local authorities of programmes that are kind of happening in the area that they think might align with the evidence, and they would want to encourage other early years settings to take part in. So that the hub would select them and use their funding so more settings can receive that programme. Okay, I think that's all of my slides, so I'll pass on to Jill, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions on these slides in the Q&A at the end.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was really useful to get that that picture of how the evidence-based programmes can be utilised to do it, and really exciting. Okay, so thank you to everybody who has been posting questions frantically in the box. I know Octavia looks all calm there, but I know you've been frantically behind the scenes collating all the questions. So if all of the panel haven't got me, and I think there's Alice and Sophie, if you want to get your camera as well. Perfect, thank you very much. So I'm going to hand over to Octavia now, who is going to be able to chair the Q&A session for us, please.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Jill. Okay, so we've got lots of questions that have come in, which is great. If more do occur to you, then please do keep posting them. It's really good for us to just kind of hear your thinking and to make sure that we've got all our bases covered. So you can see everyone who's on the panel here with us. So we've got Jill, we've got Sarah from EEF, and we've got Alice and Sophie from the DFE. So between us, hopefully we'll be able to answer the majority of the things that are coming through. What I've tried to do as you've been posting your questions is kind of group them so that we can try and sort of approach them in a way that makes sense, so we're not hopping about too much. But as I say, if you've got more, just keep posting them. We're going to get through as many of the questions as we can, but don't worry if we don't get to yours, because what we'll be doing is the FAQ document that's on the National Children's Bureau website, on the link that Jill showed earlier, that will be updated frequently to reflect questions that are coming in either through these sessions, or if you email questions in, then we're making sure that that FAQ has everything on it. And equally, if you are watching this as a recording, then you've still got your opportunity to ask questions if they're not answered by sending them in. There are a couple of questions that have come in that I know are answered on the FAQ, so I'm not necessarily not going to take them here because they're on the FAQ, but it might be that some of them, and if they're very detailed questions about part of the application form or something that's very specific to your circumstances, then we may well deal with it out of this session, either by picking it up in an email or adjusting the FAQ. So we'll get to as many as we can, but please don't worry if we don't address your specific question, it will be dealt with. Okay, and I can see that somebody's got their hand up, and unfortunately the way that this is set up, we can't actually address questions directly with people through, speaking with you live. So do use the question function, and if not, send in an email. All right, lovely. Okay, thank you. Right, so I'm going to start off with quite a general question, which I think is a really good one that's really important, which is about deprivation and the selection process. So we've had a few questions in about the selection criteria and the need for a setting to be within an area of disadvantage, and also a specific question about what should happen when a setting isn't necessarily meeting that criteria, but they are still serving children from disadvantaged backgrounds. So really important question. Shall I start off by putting that to either Alice or Sophie, because I know this is something that you've thought about really carefully.
Yes. Yeah, I'm happy to pick that up. So, so the reason that we that we set a sort of preference, as Jill described it, for hubs to be themselves located in areas of deprivation was that because we know that that the COVID pandemic has disproportionately affected socioeconomically disadvantaged children, and some of our early market engagement, when we were speaking to the sector as we were developing this programme, those from the sector were telling us that if you're going to support children from disadvantaged backgrounds, then, and you're going to be supporting other settings and how they do that, then you really need to understand that yourselves and to be serving disadvantaged children in your own setting. And so that's sort of where that preference has come from. But we recognise that individual circumstances of settings, there could be some specific circumstances where actually you might have lots of experience of working with other settings that do support disadvantaged children, and you may be able to make a case even if your setting isn't actually located in an area of deprivation according to the data. So the application form asks you to provide the according to the EDACI measure, which is described in detail in the application form, about how to find the level of deprivation in your specific postcode for your setting, and ask you to provide that. But if in running through that data you find that actually you're not in a deprived or most deprived area, then you've got, I think it's about 200 words in the application form to be able to sort of make your case and explain your experience of working with disadvantaged children. So it's not an absolute no-no if your postcode is not located in an area of deprivation, but there's an opportunity then for you to explain your experience of supporting disadvantaged children.
That's really helpful, Alice. Thank you. It's a really comprehensive answer and really reassuring. Okay, so I'm going to stick with the application process. So we've had quite a few questions in relation to the role of the local authority in the application process and the need to provide a reference from the local authority. And several people have mentioned that they're serving areas which cut across local authority boundaries, particularly where they're in an area where they've got small unitary authorities. So could somebody just give a few thoughts on that and how they should approach it? Jill, do you maybe want to kick that one off?
Do you want me to come in on that? Yeah, great. So yeah, on the application form, as you scroll down to the bit that asks about the local authority, it asks you to provide us with the name of who you feel is most important to be able to do that. What we have asked is that you have a conversation with the local authority before you put their name on, so that somebody doesn't get something out of the blue thinking, why am I being asked this? So yeah, and if you serve children from more one local authority than another, then it might be that you need to let us know that, and we can work with you. Like I say, any individual questions that people have got, please do email those into us.
It's lovely, thank you. Okay, and then we had a couple of questions in relation to the requirements around Ofsted, and a few people have given their specific circumstances where perhaps they've set up quite recently and they don't yet have an Ofsted rating. And I just want to clarify that, and maybe it would help if we sort of started off by explaining a little bit about the kind of thinking behind the requirements for the quality of the setting and how we're trying to kind of triangulate that information. So maybe we should explain that, and then the specific requirement in relation to Ofsted. So I think that's probably either NCB or DFE if somebody wants to kick that off.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick that off. I think the sort of, no problem. I mean, I think the short answer is that as sort of Jill set out in terms of the vision of this programme, this is about the strongest settings in the system then supporting other settings, so drawing on their own experience and their own strong practice in their own setting of supporting others. And the sort of the clearest or one of the clear benchmarks we have of quality is of course Ofsted ratings, and so that's why we wanted to include sort of a minimum eligibility requirement, and that's why we've included Ofsted. I think you mentioned, Octavia, specific questions from sort of newer settings. The application process does ask settings to demonstrate a lot of experience in terms of supporting other settings. And I think our sort of starting point was it would be quite difficult for newer settings to be able to demonstrate the breadth of experience that we're looking for if they haven't been set up for long enough to have had an Ofsted inspection. So that's the sort of thinking behind that. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Jill.
Sorry, it wouldn't unmute there. No, I think you've covered it really well there, Alice. So yeah, it's about that journey that settings have been on as well. That's what's really sort of exemplified in their own Ofsted outcome. That we're really looking, like Alice says, for those strong settings to be able to lead this for us.
Very lovely, thank you. So I've got some fairly specific but important questions here about eligibility in the application process. So I'm going to put 2 or 3 of them together. So first of all, in terms of childminders, can we just explain a bit about the requirements in relation to that? So does it need to be an actual childminder, or could it, for example, be a childminding organisation that has a wider brief? And I think you sort of covered this a bit in the presentations and the importance of it being provider led, but it would be good to go over that and the specific requirements in relation to that. Similarly, we've got a question about, do you have to have a school within your partnership? Is that a requirement? Is that essential? And then the third one, which is related, is do you have to name one setting as the lead partner, or could you have a kind of partnership of lead settings, if you see what I mean? So it'd be good to just cover off those 3 specifics if we could. Jill, do you want to have a go at starting off on that?
Yep, I'll have a go at something else. I'll frantically scribble those down, so if I forget what you said, Octavia, just nudge me. So yeah, childminders. So it can't be an organisation. This is something that we've had really quite long discussions about, and feel really clear that because the whole process is around sector supporting sector, it's about providers supporting providers. So anybody who's part of that partnership does need to be an early years provider. However, if there are organisations within a local area who are providing support to the sector, they will be part of the local network, and we'd really encourage people to sort of reach out to whoever else is in their area that's already supporting that network. So regarding childminders as well, we're very keen for childminders as part of a partnership. At the moment, we're saying that the lead setting needs to be a group-based setting, but we are having some further discussions about that at the moment. Your next one, you asked about schools being part of a partnership. No, it's not a requirement that schools are part of a partnership. I absolutely understand that some areas don't already have close working relationships between private and voluntary independent settings and schools. What we're saying is that the aim of the programme is to work across the sector. So it's about demonstrating how in that broader network you're going to be able to liaise with schools as well. So it doesn't have to be part of the partnership, but does add strength to an application where schools, where those partnerships span the sector. The last one, I've just written name stroke lead. My scribbling down there.
Yeah,
so yes, we do need. Was that about what does it need to have one named lead?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. So yes, we have set up the application in a way that we need one named lead setting, but in the application form you will also list and give details of the up to 4 other partners that are part of your application if you are a partnership application. When it comes to interview stage, we've also made capacity there that if you want to bring somebody from one of the other partner settings to your interview as well, then that can also happen. So hopefully that answered that question. OK, please, Sophie and Alice, do chip in if you've anything else I've not covered there.
No, I think you covered that well, Jill.
Yeah. That was great. OK, so I've got a couple more on the application process, and I'm going to start with the second one actually because it's very much related to what you were just saying, Jill. So someone has asked, can a local authority owned day nursery, so a maintained nursery, lead the programme? It's one of the questions. And interestingly as well, they've just mentioned that particular nursery that this person's thinking about is part of the family hub offer, and obviously that's something that we've been thinking about in the relationship between the two programs. And then the second question is specifically about the application form, and it's about whether the individual questions within the application form will be marked separately. So do people need to make sure that if they've got something that they feel is really important for two of the questions, that they need to repeat it in the different answers? I think that's a really good question. So yeah, sorry Jill, do you want
come in on that?
Start us off again, and then we will be coming to some EEF related questions in a minute.
Sorry Sarah, we're stealing the show.
Yeah.
So the first question is a really easy one to answer. That's basically a yes. Local authority run day nurseries can apply, as can settings that are part of a multi-academy trust. However, the application does need to come from the provider, so it can't come from the local authority, although we know that's intertwined there as well. So it's the provider, so the manager of the provision, that would be offering that, and that link with family hubs as well. Yeah, excellent. We're all for joining things together. That sounds great to me. The application form. So yes. We have the scoring matrix is the go-to place to look for that. What we've done with that is it's a really quite a detailed document, and it breaks down each of the questions, and for each of the questions it breaks down little sort of mini points that we're looking at. Now the mini points aren't going to be scored, you'll see from the matrix, aren't going to be scored individually. They're a yes no type thing for us as we're scoring, and each question will have an overall, but you can see really clearly from that exactly what we're looking for. Hopefully the way we've set it out, there shouldn't be too much duplication, because we've also given you quite a tight word count in there as well, so you need to be concise with your answers if you can. So hopefully if you read that scoring matrix, you should see that we're actually asking for quite distinct things in each part.
It's really helpful, thank you. And I know I'm hopping about a little bit here now, but another one's come in that I think is quite an important one about eligibility. So if your school requires improvement, but EYFS is good, are you still ineligible? And the second part of this I think is very important as well. If you requires improvement, how do you go about joining a hub network for support? And yeah, we want to take that one because obviously this is all about support and improvement. So do either Sophie or Alice, do you want to pick those up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so to be eligible to become a hub, you would need a good or outstanding Ofsted rating. So if you have requires improvement rating, then I'm afraid then you won't be eligible. And the reason that we didn't go by EYFSP scores was because this is all about pre-reception, and that's why we didn't use EYFSP as a measure, and also because of course PVI providers wouldn't then be able to provide that. So we wanted that to be consistent sort of quality benchmark across the board. And then as far as how would you go about joining a network, I mean, this will be something that we'll be working with each of the hubs once they're selected, as Jill said about, you know, the NCB will be really supporting each hub around developing its network and supporting them in terms of how they then reach out to settings. So and obviously we'll be, you know, doing what we can from the centre to make sure that as many settings as possible know about the existence of these hubs once they're selected. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that, Jill, on that latter point.
I couldn't get it to unmute again there. No, I think you've covered that. Yeah, I mean, that'll be part of those discussions that we have with the hubs about how they're reaching all of the providers that need to. But obviously as well, if you are a setting and you know you've got a hub that's in your local area and you want that support, then also feel free to reach out. That once the list of hubs are recruited, that'll be available so people will know who and where the hubs are.
Really helpful, thank you. And just to be crystal clear on this, because we have had a few questions in. So if you had a scenario where your school overall requires improvement, but your early years had a good rating for their part of the Ofsted, then that overall school would still be ineligible to apply to be the lead for the hub, because it's about the whole school having that rating and the kind of infrastructure to be able to support the network. That's my assumption, but I just wanted to double check that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry, I think I misunderstood the question. I thought it was
No,
asking about EYFSP.
I didn't make it clear when I read it to you, so I think your point was also really important, but I just wanted to make sure we got to the one that came through as well. Yeah. But what I've just said is that, do you want to just comment on that?
Yeah, I think that's correct in terms of what we said on the application, that the early years provision needs to be rated good or outstanding.
Okay, lovely. All right, what I'm going to do now, we've got lots more questions related to the kind of operations of the hub and the application process and so on as well, but I just want to move over to some of the questions we've had in relation to evidence and research, and bring Sarah in from EEF. So we've got some really good questions here. So first one is around, in terms of the interventions, the curated list of programmes that hubs will be able to kind of apply for funding in order to be able to deliver, will that include peer-to-peer reviewed research programmes? Could you just explain a little bit about that process, Sarah?
I think I'm not sure I understand the question, that the programmes themselves involve peer-to-peer reviews. Do you mean?
I think the question, what it's kind of getting at, is in terms of that list and how that list is going to be compiled, what's the kind of level of evidence of the programmes that would be on that list?
Okay, so as I mentioned, there's kind of 3 categories of programmes. The one that was at the top that we kind of talked about as categorised as established programmes that are ready for an efficacy trial. Most programmes that exist to support the early years sector have not had an RCT for them before. So it's unlikely that we will have found programmes that already have strong programmatic evidence that they work, and that's why EEF has committed lots of money to evaluate these programmes, to do that check that they actually do improve children's outcomes. So the programmes that are in that menu are programmes that that their content aligns with evidence-based practices and approaches, both in terms of the content that they encourage people to implement with the children, but then also the process and the design of the programme in terms of its implementation with staff, because there's 2 levels of evidence base there. So, and then the evaluator that we're commissioning to study that delivery in the programme will enable us to do the check that they are definitely improving children's outcomes. If we took a bar that said we'll only fund programmes that have strong randomised control trial evidence and have proved that they have an impact on children's outcomes, we won't end up with anything to fund. So we've kind of created a menu where there's it's a bit more about capacity of the programmes, but we're also providing that check on content and process, and to ensure that it's kind of a good bet that it could potentially improve children's outcomes. I hope I've answered that.
Yeah, no, that's a lovely answer. That's great, thank you. And there's another one that's related to that, and I think we picked this up actually in the last webinar as well, and it was really good to sort of hear you talk about this and explain it a bit more. So the question is, where an area has already got some programmes that they're developing locally, and they feel that there's a kind of strong understanding of how evidence is working within their area and with their community, then how does that sit alongside what the EEF will be putting forward as the sort of list of approved programmes? So it'd be good to explain how those 2 things all kind of interact with each other.
Yeah, that is a really good question. We really want to value the expertise that the hubs and their networks have in understanding the programmes that are available are in their area, and what influence that programme is having on staff and children. And so the 3rd category of programme, the innovative or developing programmes, will provide the opportunity for hubs to recommend a programme that will provide some guidance for hubs to support them with that process of selecting or recommending a programme in their area. But we really want to value that kind of local knowledge and expertise and make sure that we are kind of drawing in those programmes and moving them through that kind of evidence pipeline, as it were. Because if there's things that have been developed and are working, we don't want to ignore those things. We want to support them.
Yeah, okay, that's fantastic to hear. And then the last one for you at the moment, Sarah, so I think you've kind of really covered this to some extent, but just to be really clear, so someone has asked, will the professional development programmes include accredited programmes, accredited training programmes?
So I'm guessing by accredited, they mean programmes that have had like an external review and suggested that they're at level 2 or level 3 or level 4 in terms of their qualification. Some of the programmes that we've already started to consider do have that facility, but we also recognise that those programmes are really intensive, and so we want to make sure that there's variety in the programmes that's offered, and some are a bit more light touch on staff time, but there's a lot more kind of the intense side of things is on implementation with children, because a lot of those kind of level 2, level 3 stuff have a lot of kind of paperwork requirements to make sure that there's staff can evidence that they've met that standard and get that qualification. So there's going to be a balance of kind of intensity, I guess, in terms of the programme's expectations, but the reason why we are including some accredited programmes that have the facility to be accredited at a level like that is because we think that that's really important for the sector to move and progress people through their profession and develop the system, particularly when to support recruitment and retention in the sector.
It's really, really helpful. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. So this is an interesting one as well about the delivery of the hub and the funding. So could we talk a little bit about how the grant funding will be kind of distributed according to different needs within the hub, and particularly the percentage of it that could be spent on staffing? And I'm not sure if we've quite got to the point yet of pinning all this down, but it'd be good to just talk a little bit about our sort of thinking around that and how that grant funding would be used. Who would like to come in?
I think that's probably one for me. So we're still working through exactly how we calculate the grant funding that each hub will get. And as Jill mentioned before, part of this will then be, working this through with hubs once they're selected. But I think the thing that we want to provide reassurance about is the fact that we have absolutely sort of factored into our thinking that we would be covering staff time. So we do not expect that any setting would be able to deliver the scale of work that we're suggesting that the hubs would be delivering, with their existing staff profiles. So I'd like to provide reassurance that we absolutely intend to cover staffing to deliver these objectives of the hubs. So I think it will be later in the process when we actually nail this down, and like I say, and that may be partly because it will be in discussions once hubs are selected or in later stages of the process. But I really wouldn't want anyone to not apply because they think that their staff time wouldn't be sufficiently funded.
It's really, really helpful and really clear. And actually a couple more questions have come in asking that, specifically what you just said. So it's really good to hear.
And actually, maybe one of the things that I'll just add, that the reason that we haven't yet, been really prescriptive about it is that we think that obviously different local circumstances are different, and different hubs might potentially have different staffing models to deliver. And so that's one of the things that we're thinking about, and that's why we're not at this stage. We haven't sort of set a specific figure in terms of a sort of cap, because at this stage we don't want to too soon rule out staffing models that some hubs may later in the process want to suggest.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, thank you. Okay, so we've got a question which I think is brilliant, and it's perhaps a really good one for us to just spend a little bit more time on, as we haven't got long left, but we've got enough time to tackle this one. So someone has very sensibly asked, what will the plan be for beyond the 2 years of the funding programme, and how will we make sure that it's a sustainable programme? And I think it would be really good to hear from all three organisations about our kind of early thoughts around that. And I know the whole programme is built around the premise of, you know, sort of building capacity that can be sustained within a local area, but it'd be great to just hear a little bit more. So I don't know, Sarah, do you want to maybe say a little bit about that from the evidence perspective? Because I think that's really key to the sustainability.
Yes, and I do, and that one of the main reasons why the EEF has committed its funding to evaluate the programmes is to progress the evidence pipeline for the early years. I suggested already that there isn't very much high quality evidence for the early years in terms of what works in terms of professional development for staff, and particularly in the non-maintained sector, most of the research has been implemented with schools and teachers. And so our commitment to fund that evaluation is to develop that understanding and move things forward. So funding that can, so the programmes can kind of move up the scale. So those ones that are kind of innovative or developing programmes, if they kind of are found to be feasible and acceptable to early years settings, could progress to kind of the pilot evaluation stage, and then future the trial stage. And that's all stuff that could happen after, you know, say the hubs might finish, or their funding finishes in 2 years. This is stuff that EEF can continue and supporting that legacy, and all of that knowledge can feed into the framework that we'll commit to kind of maintain beyond the life of the hub if we think that it's useful. So yeah, we're starting all, we're committed to this because we think it's going to be a really important tool. There's lots of important tools as part of it that can be continued beyond the life of the hub.
It's brilliant, thank you. Who else would like to come in on that one? Jill?
To come in and quickly just say how, so for us, you know, we've talked about NTB being conveners and collaborators. So a big part of it for us is those networks that will have been made, those barriers that will have been broken down between sector type that we know are already broken down in some areas, but we know in other areas there's still quite a clear divide there as well. And the shared learning as well is something that we really hope, along with the stuff that Sarah was saying there as well, will have a legacy for years and years to come. You know, there'll be resources produced through the hubs that will be able to continue sharing and make sure that provides a legacy also.
Brilliant, thank you. Anything from Alice or Sophie?
We have the hardest job because a lot of stuff's already been said, well said by Sarah and Jill. But I guess what I'd say, just in addition to what they've said, is that so obviously, yeah, this is, you know, this is part of our recovery package, and that's why we have, you know, funding secured for 2 years. But we do think that, we hope that this will have a legacy beyond that period, because this is, as we've sort of been saying throughout this webinar, this is about, you know, the sector supporting itself. And so, you know, what we're trying to do is to, with this funding and with this support, we're looking to sort of put more capacity into the system and sort of upskilling those system leaders to then support others in the sector, and to create those networks that we really, you know, think can have and hope will have a long legacy, even once the investment from DFE comes to an end.
Okay, that's brilliant, thank you so much. Okay, so that takes us to 4:29. So unfortunately, I don't think I can ask any more questions, but I am really pleased that we've got through the vast majority. As I said at the beginning, anything that we haven't got to, we will be adding into the frequently asked questions. We have a dedicated email address that you can use if questions arise. And I would also really, I know you're all super busy, but I really would advise you to have a look at the FAQ, because it's really, really thorough, and it does answer a lot of the things that are coming up. So it'd be really, really helpful when you get a chance to have a look at that and see if it answers things that are occurring to you. But thank you so much to the panel for answering all those questions. Really, really helpful. And I'm going to hand back over to Jill.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you so much, Octavia. Hopefully we got through a good number of the questions there, and like Octavia says, I've just put on the screen here all the different ways that you can get in touch with us, and you can keep up to date with everything that's going on around the hubs. So please make a note of those there, and please do get in touch. But yeah, just to echo Octavia's thanks there to all of you for inputting on that Q&A panel as well. So I'd also like to thank you all, Sophie, Alice and Sarah, for your presentation today, and I think it's been really useful, and to Octavia for chairing that Q&A session. I ought to also say a thank you to Tariq, Alison and Sarah behind the scenes, who I know have been working really hard to keep going with all the tech things that go on behind the scenes, etc. But lastly, my big thanks goes to all of you for taking your time out to attend the event today and for posting all those questions. Can't begin to tell you how valuable they are in helping us continue to shape this really exciting offer. As anticipated, we didn't manage to get through all of the questions, so please do be reassured, as we've said numerous times now, that we'll be collating all of them and adding them to the frequently asked questions. And I'll just put another plug in there for making sure you've got the most latest version of the frequently asked questions by checking that date at the bottom. So we've massively valued your input today and your thoughts, so really grateful if you would also, if I just click on to the next one, if you would complete a short online evaluation form for us. So that'll come out in an email to you either today or certainly by the end of the week. If you could possibly take a few minutes to complete that for us, that would be really useful in helping us to shape the sort of information that we're sharing with you on an ongoing basis. So thank you all once again for attending today, and I very much look forward to working with you as we develop and support the hubs. Hopefully some of you who are here today will indeed be our successful hubs going forward, and I'm certainly looking forward to meeting more of you through the interview and visit process as well. Again, just to reiterate, if you've any colleagues who were unable to attend today, or indeed unable to attend the September webinar, these recordings will be available on the Foundation Years website shortly. So once again, thank you to our presenters today, and thank you all for coming along to watch this. I hope you found it useful, and I look forward to receiving applications and working with you. Thank you all so much.